Hey everybody, this is Coach Floyd. We're going to be looking at lesson 3 of animation in games, the circle wall. We're going to do this one together, and then I'm going to let you do the work on the brick wall, which will be very similar, except it'll be using rectangles instead of circles. So what this one is going to do is it's going to draw a circle, one circle every delay milliseconds. It's going to draw it to the left, and then once it finishes that row, it's going to go down to the next row, and so forth. It's also going to alternate colors. And we are going to be using a timer and not a loop. Okay, so if we could do this with a loop, however, it would put all the circles on the screen at computer speed, and we would not see that progression of them going on the on the screen. It would just throw all of them up there at the same time. So let's go down here and let's work on this. A couple things. I'm going to pseudocode this. Well, no, I'm going to pseudocode later, but I'm actually going to code this one. So if you want to attempt this one on your own, go for it, and then you can always come back and look at this to kind of check yourself and make sure you get all the corrections. The first thing I need to do is I need to figure out how many circles go across the screen. If you think back and look at this first row, there we have a previous exercise where we did this, where we put circles evenly across the screen. It was called the worm. It was back in Control Structures Unit, the for loop lesson. So you can go back there and you can grab that code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it in here as we go. The first thing is I need to know num circles, and the number of circles that go across the screen is going to be based upon the size of the screen. Okay, so get width, and then I'm going to divide that by the radius. Okay, but I can't just do it by the radius because that is, half the circle. I need to know the radius times 2 because I got to do it by the diameter of the circle. So that's how many circles will fit across the screen no matter what size circles I make. Now I also need to know the number of rows, and that is going to do the same thing except with the height, and divide that by radius times 2. Okay. One other thing is because we're not using a for loop, if we were using a for loop to do this, then we would use I as our counter and stuff like that, but we don't have that. We're using a timer, so I need to do a circle counter, and I'm going to start that at 0 because I haven't counted anything yet, and then I also need a row counter. Now from there, I am going to, let's see, jump down here. Now, because I'm making a lot of circles, I don't need to create anything in the start function, so all I have to do here is set my timer. And I'm going to call this draw, and I'm going to set it to delay milliseconds. Now you may call your timer, your callback function something else, and that is totally cool. You can do that. I'm just going to call it draw, make it nice and easy. Now, once I get in here, I am going to use that code that we used from back in the worm. And the way we did that was we created a for loop, but we're not going to use a for loop here. Let's see. Let's see. So once I go to draw, I need to create a circle. So var circle equals new circle, and it gives me a radius for the circle. And then I'm going to circle.set position. Now, if you copy this over from your worm, which is totally cool, what we had in there for our x coordinate was radius times I times 2 plus radius. And that was our x position. Now, I was our counter. We're not using I in here because we're not using that for loop. So instead of doing the I am going to use our counter, our circle counter. All right, and that's going to tell us what number it is, and that's going to space it just like the I did for us in our other one. Now with our, if we're looking at the row, right, this looks the exact same going down. So I'm actually going to do the same thing, okay, except I am going to multiply this by the row counter, because I have to, if we turned it sideways and looked at it, it looks the exact same as the worm, but going down. So there's our row counter times 2 plus radius. Alright, so that's the hardest part right there, is figuring that part out. Now if we looked back at our caterpillar, where we alternated colors, we would know that we are going to run to see if our count is even or odd. So on even numbered circles we're going red, odd numbers we're going black. So if the circle counter mod 2 equals 0, so this is how we see about an even number. If you don't remember that, look back at the if statements, and there's one of the exercises in the if statement lessons shows you this. So if a number modulated by 2 gives us a 0 as the remainder, then we have an even number. And I'm going to circle dot set color to color dot red. Whoops, there we go. Else circle dot set color. Oopsie. Well, if I hit the right button, color dot black. Now, I could just put the if statement in there without the else, because if I don't set a color, it defaults to black, but it's always good to throw that in there. Alright, and now I'm going to add my circle to the screen. Now if I run this, let's see what we get. Okay, we got a red circle. The reason is we have not told it to count higher. Okay, so after I put my first circle in there, I need to circle counter plus plus. So I need to add a circle in. So now I'm counting my circles. Now how do we figure this out? Right? So how do we make it go down to the next row? Well, after I have added my circle, then I'm going to see if I have reached my number of circles. So if circle counter, okay, equals num circles, then I need to increase my row. So now I can go down to my next row. So my row counter plus plus, I increase it by 1. So now when we hit the end, it does go down. However, it's just right here, and it went, and then it came down here, and it went, and then it came down here. We've got to get it back over here. Well, back over here, this circle number is 0. So after I increase my row, I have to say circle counter goes back to 0. So now, when I hit run, now I'm counting as it goes down. Last thing I got to do is stop my timer. Well, I know how many rows I'm supposed to have, my num rows right here. So if my row counter, and what I'm going to do, let's go equals num rows, then stop timer, and I have to give it my callback function, and now it will stop. So let's run it again, make sure it's working like it should, and there we go. Okay, so I know it's hard to see that it stopped, but it did. Okay. One way you could check to see if it stops is you could do a print line and print the word stop. And so if it comes into this right here, then that means that it'll print down here. So when we run code, so when it hits the bottom, we should get a word that says stop. And that shows that this if statement did run, so that means it stopped it. Okay, that's optional though, we don't have to do that. So that is the circle wall. Basically, you are using the counter. Now, with the brick wall, the difference is, let's look at it real quick. Draw a brick that covers the canvas brick by brick, starting from the bottom left corner. One brick should be drawn every 50 milliseconds. Your code should work for any brick height and length, but when testing your code, make sure that your variables are set to the following. You should use color.random color. So instead of doing an if statement, when you do rectangle.setColor, just put color.random color, that it put this in there, and it will give you this randomly shaded red. You don't have to worry about that. It'll do that for you. Basically, it's a little bit easier because this, you don't have to worry about the radius and the ×2 and all that stuff. You're just worried about the count of the rectangle and the length. And over here, you're worried about the count of the rectangle and the height of the rectangle. Your counters, you want to start at the height. You want to start it at the bottom, so and kind of work your way back. So it's a little bit different, and I want you to struggle, and I want you to think about it. If you have trouble, then let me know, and if I need to make another video to pseudocode that, I will. Okay, but it's very similar to the way we've done this. Again, it's using rectangles instead of squares or circles, so and you don't have to do, this part's a little bit easier, but it really is based in here. You're still increasing your counters this way, setting your counters back and stuff like that. Okay, hope this helps, and give it an attempt. Go ahead and copy this one in. Give it an attempt over here. Let me know if you need help.